It's Jay. I'm back in for another one. And today I have with me,
Captain Keith.
what's upper?
Just living and loving life, man. It's you know, doing all
Beautiful.
right. All right. Weather's finally getting a little cooler, so it's nice. Lovely
Yeah.
day.
That summer went by pretty fast. It seemed like it
Yeah,
didn't came and
yeah.
went pretty quickly.
Yes, it
But
did.
yeah. So what did you think of this whole summer thing with the movies? I know it's been kind of shaky for the past couple of years because of, COVID. And then after COVID, the rollout of stuff, it was kind of slower. So how do you feel about this year as far as like the movies that came out recently for the summer?
Kind of disappointing, with the exception of Deadpool and Wolverine. Disappointing. I feel like they did too much last year. Some of that stuff from last year could have been utilized this summer. Like that Flash movie probably would have did better this year if it came out versus last year. They did too much last year, and now it's been kind of bones, the dry bones this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
This summer was kind of disappointing for the most part. What
Yeah.
was it? Was it Inside Out Part Two? Was the
Yeah.
big sleeper hit? Really?
Yeah. Hey, that's a
It's
kids
just,
movie. They get
well,
you
yeah,
get more with
and I do
with
want
a
to see it.
PG movie than you do rated R a lot of times.
Right. And I do want and Despicable Me 4. And I do want to see those films. But I don't even know if I think Inside Out beat Despicable Me 4. I don't know if Despicable Me 4 did that well.
I don't know. I saw Despicable Me 4 and it was fine, but that's the fourth one.
Right.
Inside
But
Out, Malaya, she saw that and she liked it a lot. I wasn't really a big fan of the first one, even though I enjoyed it. It's not my go-to,
and
but
Kung Fu Panda, I do want to see that because I like Jack Black. But I mean, it's
yeah, that
just
was okay.
you see what I'm saying?
They,
So yeah,
yeah,
it
they had,
was.
they had Aquafina in it. They were trying to push Aquafina as the lead in a way, so I wasn't trying to hear that.
Yeah, there are disappointing things that
Yeah.
it looks like Deadpool and Wolverine was probably the summer movie of the year. That and Inside Out 2, apparently.
Yeah, and last year with the flood of movies and stuff, and I understand because of timing and stuff and schedules and stuff, they kind of treat movies like meat, like it's the last day, so they're just gonna throw everything out there. They're not gonna push it past that expiration date. They got to get it off the shelf
Well,
because they got new inventory coming. So they kind of treat it like that. And I
well,
think
I will.
also if they were kind of better movies, it would have worked out better too. So sometimes you'll eat something because you're starved, and sometimes you'll eat something because it's good, and you'll keep going back for seconds and thirds. Versus like this is all I have, so I'll just do it. It's not the best thing, but I'll go for it. Real quick before we get into this Deadpool Wolverine discussion concerning Marvel, what did you think of the unveiling of the new Doctor Doom being played by Robert Downey Jr.?
I am not a fan at all.
I can
I
see it in your face.
I am furious. I
I
am
saw that.
angry.
I saw
I'm
that eye roll coming from
disgusted.
around the corner.
I am
You lean
disgusted.
back slow
Uh,
on that. You were like, let me
yeah,
get situated so
yeah.
so I can say what I gotta
That
say.
was some bullshit. Robert
Oh,
Downey Jr., you're messing with your own legacy. You will always be Iron Man. I don't want to see you in no other metal face if you ain't Iron Man. You deserve all the money they want to give you to play Iron Man in your Iron Man movies and in your Avengers movies. And I'll even give you Sherlock. But outside of that, no, man, you like everybody else. But no, that was cheating. You cheated a new, young, and upcoming actor who could have been black, white, Asian, anybody.
yeah,
Somebody new to give us a new feel to that role. You cheated us out of that. I do not want to see you as Doctor Doom. I'm going to watch it, but
yeah,
no, man. You're not Victor Von Doom, bro. No, that was cheating. That was cheating. That was
wow,
cheating. You cutting corners. No, man. No,
yeah.
no. Stick to Iron Man.
No
That
problem.
was,
I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about it. I kind of understand like they're trying to do like the safe choice. They're trying to, because Jonathan Majors was supposed to be the main protagonist. That got kind of pulled out, and so
and it's
um,
hypocritical with that now too. So now I'm
right,
starting to feel like you and Wayne. I'm a little pissed off about that because the more I think about Robert Downey's background, although he's clean, and Ezra Miller's background, and they were able to do all these things. So, but Jonathan Majors, he
yeah,
went to trial. He was convicted of guilty, whatever. He's
yeah,
going to counseling. He's acting again. So
yeah. I don't
why
know.
not
I
let him
think
continue?
Not saying you should be fighting with anybody or whatever, or getting into it physically with anybody, but I think like nothing says let it go like seeing a black man running from a white woman down the streets of New York. If that was in a movie, I wouldn't believe it. And that was real life footage. If I saw that anywhere other than in a movie, which I wouldn't believe if I saw it in that, I saw that in real life. And so for that not to show that you're trying to stay away from trouble or a person that could really take advantage of a situation, back out of a situation, or to show restraint. I haven't seen anything short of that than somebody like a woman, spitting in somebody's face or throwing water in somebody or something, pouring a drink on somebody. I haven't seen restraint like that to that level ever in my life. I have never seen something. I never seen a dog running away from a cat or a mouse. I never seen a cat running away from a mouse in my life. That was equivalent to that, and I still couldn't believe I was seeing that.
You went out of your way to prosecute this person. At one point, the ex-girlfriend wasn't even in the country. Y'all went out of y'all way to prove a point. Now, I get you don't like an arrogant black man. I understand that. And that's why you went out your way. But that's what you did. You went out your way to punish this man. Was he a saint? No. Does he have issues? Yes. But when you go out your way to punish somebody, when you can see that they're both unstable, y'all should have just dropped it or gave him a little fee and called it a day. But because he was very popular, he's a great actor, and he had all these different roles, and then I guess it came out that he was arrogant and maybe problematic on set. So you decide to punish him by doing this? You went out your way to punish him.
Right, but how can arrogance be a crime when you see most of the Hollywood folks, that's how they roll. You think those dudes you think Arnold Schwarzenegger don't have an attitude or Sylvester Stallone or Mickey Rourke or anybody, Bruce Willis, they all got attitudes and jerks and people don't like them and can't speak to them on the set and all that kind of stuff. And you care about somebody's attitude when they delivering all this great stuff. And sometimes you have these couples and we can't act like we don't have these fighting couples. Like women that like to fight dudes and dudes like to fight, and that's just their relationship. We can't act like we haven't seen it, and that's how that goes. How some women be picking on guys and guys can't take it no more, or you got some guys that are bullies. Because sometimes it'd be like one side be aggressor. It'd be like the woman abusing the guy, sometimes the guy abusing the woman, and sometimes they both put on boxing gloves, and that's just how their relationship is. It's not cool, but it happens, right?
Yeah, they were both problematic.
So I'm just like, don't make it where if somebody's passed out in your closet, you're afraid to call emergency to come help them. Not saying it would be me because I wouldn't be in that situation, but if I was in that situation, I could have seen it where she would have died in that closet because nobody would have helped her because the person was too afraid to call because of what could possibly happen from making that phone call.
You're right.
Don't make it somebody can't do the right thing and afraid that they're going to get punished for doing the right thing. Now, it's almost like that. Because that whole thing wouldn't have went down if you would have just left her in the closet. The scary part is if you would have left her in the closet, she wouldn't have woke up. It'd have been a bigger mess. But at least it'd been one-sided story versus this back and forth stuff or the police telling her what to say or all this other kind of stuff. Don't make it where death is a better option than to try to save her life. But I'm just saying, don't make it where letting something go undone and getting worse be a better option than trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I'm not caping for Jonathan Majors, but at the same time, if you're gonna do for one, do for all, or don't do it all.
But I'm saying, don't make the results for doing the right thing, worse than doing the bad thing.
I agree with you, but
that's almost how it is. That's almost why it's the same thing with people trying to help people that you don't know. Before you see somebody on the side of the road and you want to help them out or whatever, or you see somebody get into an argument and you want to step in. Careful. You know what that gets you now? That gets you killed. That gets you killed. And it's a shame because you should be able to help somebody out when you see help, but you don't know what that is. And what we see nowadays is people dying because of, neglect, or somebody could have been there 5 minutes earlier, an hour earlier and save that person, but so afraid to get involved that it got worse. We've seen a lot more of that, results of non-help, than we are help. And that's a shame, but that's a society that we live in that we got to let God sort it out. And it's getting way too far when we are here to be help for each other. But like I said, it could be a problem where you're trying to help somebody who's going to make your life bad and nobody can't say anything to anybody. Not to take advantage of or abuse, but I'm just saying you can't step in and help your fellow man without it being a problem. And the people who's supposed to be protecting and looking out for people like the cops ain't always working out like that. That's we are getting the results of minding your own damn business. The society we have now, this craziness, where, you know, the community looked out for your child, the community looked out for the women who need it, the women looked out for the sick or the old folk, all that stuff. Everybody figures it out for themselves, and it's a sad world. But if you do anything other than that, that could mean your life, just from trying to help or speak up.
Well, no, you're right. But yeah, getting back to, I'm not happy with it at all. I think it was a cheap shot. I think he's great as Iron Man. I think his strongest roles was in Less Than Zero, Chaplin, Iron Man, and Sherlock. I like him in those. He's a good actor, but
he is.
You know, those are his strengths. And giving him money, lots of money for Iron Man, yes. Giving him some of that for Sherlock, yes. Other roles, no, man. You haven't you know Dr. Doom, but we'll see. You're too small. I just don't. No.
Like,
now, so if you're gonna do that, then give me Tom Cruise now as Iron Man in the multiverse. If you're gonna do that, if you're gonna do all that now, then bring Tom Cruise in as the alternate Tony Stark. Let me see that. But
that's what they're supposed to be doing, but it never worked out.
Right.
But
I know before Robert Downey Jr. But I definitely thought that Dr. Doom could have been dope. I mean, even if they would have given it to somebody who was Black or anything else, Black as a tribute to MF Doom, or just anybody. They don't even have to be Black, but I would have loved to seen a new actor to have some fun with that role. And I'm not going to get it.
What's his name? Cillian Murphy. Everybody's kind of saying him, and I kind of agree with it. Even though he's kind of small in stature, I thought that would have been a good look. But like I said, I understand Marvel kind of afraid, trying to figure it out. They are trying to reorganize some stuff and figure out how can we make the safest move. At least they're trying to move and trying to figure stuff out. Now, do I think they're overcompensating by throwing him in there? Yes, but I understand why they would probably try to pull that. And with the multiverse and all the different stuff going on, that would be a way to make it plausible. But it is kind of like, you know, we kind of seen this trick before, but we'll see.
Because at this point, even if you were to bring Jonathan Majors back, that would work at this point. But it is what it is now. So
they kind of wrote him off.
Or they're gonna use a different king. A different person.
But thought it was kind of funky is when TMZ asked Jonathan Majors what he thought about that announcement. One, they shouldn't have asked him, and two, he shouldn't have answered. But even though he did answer nicely, I'd have been like, get out my face with that mess. You know, kudos to him. Next question, kind of thing. So back on this thing with Marvel. Marvel's been going through a lot lately. It's been very interesting. A lot of stuff behind the scenes, a lot of stuff of movies not being up to par, shows not being up to par. They're trying to get stuff pulled together. And who'd have thought the character that would have been a thorn in their side, who they didn't want to invite to the club, who's too raunchy, you know, doing his own kind of thing, is the thing that came in that could possibly save the situation, or to give a more authentic version of something that they can't even do themselves. You know what I mean? Like they did your mama recipe better than your mama. That's a problem. That's very interesting. That's very telling. And so it's interesting to see it, and they have to admit that, yes, this tastes like mama's and possibly better, and thank you, versus trying to say this is my mama's recipe. So it's very interesting to have that kind of thing go on with this movie.
Do you understand or realize what type of magic it took for him to get Hugh Jackman to be Wolverine and put that costume on, and then to get those cameos from certain people, because we haven't done the spoilers yet, that I never thought I was ever going to see again in the film like that. That was a feat in itself, and how they kept that all under wraps.
Well, I was surprised because I did see different things than I expected. I will say that. I was surprised the direction it went and what we got. But being the way that the Deadpool movies are, as far as, you know, they're not super serious. They're off a little bit. They're kind of quirky and different, that if anything like we got was going to happen, it would happen there. You know what I mean? It's almost like they're joking around so they could say more stuff because people are not taking it serious. If Marvel was to do something like that in their movies, it counts, right? Deadpool, you could say something that's kind of crazy or make a joke or play with things, and it'd be like, oh, if you didn't like it, he was just playing. You kind of got deniability. You could kind of blow it off like it was nothing versus it being like, this is real. And so it gives it a little more leeway and to test things that you couldn't test in a real game. You know what I mean? Like this is like the practice, so you can see what works and what don't work. And like I said, people are forgiven if you miss that ball, but let it be the actual game and you miss that ball, you costing everybody everything. Yeah. People are not joking or smiling and not forgiving. Either you failed or you won. And so Deadpool is kind of like, either way, we're just going for a good time. There's no stakes. Even though there isn't.
I know, I agree with you. Well, and ironically, he brought it all back together. He pulled him and Hugh Jackman pulled it all back together.
Yes.
They might as well have said, Marvel, biatch. You know,
right.
They dropped the microphone. They just did.
Yeah.
So, and like you said, and it was all unexpected because this was the stepchild that nobody wanted to deal with. But now the stepchild is your favorite child now. Because
he won the lottery.
Exactly. Won the lottery.
He won the lottery.
Yeah.
You're my favorite nephew.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're the favorite. See, because the thing is that the Avengers films were great, and I knew after that last one, where we got to see Chadwick for the last time.
Oh man,
where do you go from here? Where do you? Yeah. I mean, you did such a great job with that franchise. I'm like, okay, well, what y'all gonna do now? So you went to TV. And some of that was good. I enjoyed Echo. You did some things, but movie-wise, I knew it wasn't going to really be the same for a minute. I knew y'all was going to be going through some stuff because you kind of gave us too much good stuff all at once. You got to pace it. And you didn't really, you got to pace it. And now, we've been seeing that. So like you said, now they've been struggling up until this film.
I think that he had so many plates, and they were loading Kevin Feige's plates too high. And even though he could control it before, they say, "Oh, and we want you part of possibly Star Wars," and this is that. They spread him too thin, and so he kind of lost focus to be on top of everything. So it's not surprising that it went down the way it did. And really, those people who do that kind of stuff, everybody doesn't have that skill set, obviously, because that's why we don't have the same results everywhere. So that goes to show how rare he is. And so even though he probably did his best to try to pick things that he thought would continue on like him, it's kind of like, okay, the dad is talented with something and you figure, oh, well, that's their son, so the son should be able to do it too. That doesn't always work out. You really got to work with that kid to keep him focused. Now, he might have some natural talent, but you really got to work with, make sure it's on point. You can't be like, just because that's your kid or the person suggested that person, that's going to work out. And so we found out when this situation, even with him trying to pick without being able to cultivate that person, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It was just too much and too far spread apart where he couldn't keep spinning plates to make sure it was all right. He probably went from sitting in there and like, oh, script part, change that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Or being in there at the dailies and being like, people are not going to like that. It doesn't feel right. Let's change that to, what's the update with this? Oh, it's looking good. Okay, I'm going to trust you. You say it's good. It's good. Okay. And then that thing hits the screen and everybody's like, what? I'm sure it was a lot of that. Like, how does this get by? Because if you're not watching what your kids are doing, they're doing everything they're not supposed to be doing. Just about guaranteed. Sometimes being overseen keeps things in line. Now, there's a fine line where you should be able to trust and think that things are going to work. But, sometimes, you know how it goes. You got to kind of be on top of stuff to make sure you get the results you want.
Yeah, you want something done right, you got to do it yourself a lot of times. You can designate with some people, but not everybody. So, you're right. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. Now, I've been seeing the trailers for the new Venom. I'm excited about that. Yeah, that's really? Marvel adjacent. I like the Venom movies. I enjoy them. I think they're fun. But Madam Web should have been better than what it was. I agree. And Madam Web could have been.
They shouldn't even made that. Like, they shouldn't even made that. Like, I would want a Spider-Woman movie before Madam Web.
Well, and they should have been connected. It was, you see, and then like I should have got my third Spider-Man movie with Andrew Garfield. I should have got that. So
I thought that was okay. I thought they approved that, so hopefully we might still get it. I thought they were in talks for that a while back. So
yeah, because my thing is, if Homeboy's on hiatus doing other stuff, slide him in, get that movie in.
I think the way this movie did, if those things were on the fence already, which I thought they was going to end up happening, this would definitely guarantee it. Let's get into spoilers. We both enjoyed this movie. Sounds like we both enjoyed it a lot.
Yes.
We both recommend it. Is it for kids? Hell no. It's a lot of cursing, a lot of innuendos and stuff. So if your kids used to a whole bunch of craziness, crazy talking and foul language and innuendos and It's going to be more of the same. If your kids are not used to that, they're used to regular Marvel movies, this is not their movie. And maybe they'll do a different cut of it, Disney cut maybe, or whatever. Who knows? Trust me, don't play. There's a lot of violence and there's a lot of language.
Yeah. You don't want
a lot of innuendos.
Yeah, you don't want to really neuter. If you neuter that film, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be worth watching, really. But it's just not for children. It's not. It's for adults.
It's rated R. Yeah. It's a rated R movie. Reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so let's get into the spoiler portion of this conversation.
Never in my life, in a million years, did I think, when we saw Elektra and then we saw Blade, when we saw Wesley Snipes back as Blade, that I was going to see him in the Deadpool movie. Because, you know, all the rumors about Ryan Reynolds and Wesley Snipes not getting along during Blade 3. Ryan Reynolds kind of stealing the show in Blade 3 with the humor and all that stuff. You know, there's probably some merit to that. I don't know. But it was, first of all, gift of having Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine. And then him actually even being comic book accurate with his costume and putting the hood on. All that was like, wow. So I was happy just to see him. But to get Wesley Snipes back as Blade and to get, you know, Jennifer Garner as Elektra, that was great. And then even Channing Tatum was great as Gambit. I was shocked at that. He was good as Gambit. I mean, all that was really cool. I liked all of that. And then Professor Xavier's sister, Cassandra Nova, I enjoyed her a lot. I enjoyed the banter. But yeah, the spoilers, I really enjoyed the cameos. That was a lot of fun. It was a delight to see them and find out where they've been all this time and some of the things that were said. It was just cool. Even the dig at Daredevil, that was funny. I enjoyed all of that. I really did. It was delightful to see Blade back in action, and to see him and Elektra and Gambit fighting. All that was cool. It was real cool. Helping to get Deadpool and Wolverine, you know, back into their universe. It was cool. I enjoyed that. That was pleasant. I mean, I heard rumblings on it, and then when I saw it, I was like, oh, snap. It really is true. He's really here. And he looked good. He looked basically the same. It was cool.
Well, right on. I really enjoyed the movie. It was a little bit different than what I expected. I thought it was going to lean in more into the X-Men and things like that. I thought it was going to be kind of the introduction of the X-Men to pull into Marvel. And so I was kind of curious, and I know before the movie came out, they had scenes of Wolverine and Deadpool fighting, so I know there's going to be a lot of action and stuff like that, and it seemed like they were in this void or the desert or whatnot, so I thought the whole movie was going to stay there. So it was interesting. To me, the story was kind of straightforward and kind of simple, but more so than a Deadpool movie, it feels like this was like a love letter to Wolverine, to the Fox movies and stuff like that, you know, with the inclusion of like Chris Evans as Johnny Storm from the original Fantastic Four movie, you know, Elektra and then Blade, like you said, Gambit and all that. And to have that fulfillment, to have Gambit in there, which I thought was pretty interesting considering all the trouble and all the false starts and stuff with Channing Tatum, with it not working out and all that. It's just kind of crazy. So it was so neat. And it wasn't the perfect interpretation, I thought, of Gambit, but it was a cool one. And Deadpool style, it's going to be silly, it's going to be jokey and all this other kind of stuff, but it still fit. But I know it must have felt special to him to really have a chance to finally have that happen, right? That he got a chance to have that fulfillment.
You know how long I've been waiting for this? Woo, I'm about to make a name for myself here.
Even if nothing else comes from it, hopefully it does, but even if nothing else comes from it, it's beautiful that he had that opportunity to make that thing a reality. So for Ryan Reynolds, I don't know how he is in real life, but for him to kind of give like that, where if anything, Deadpool was just a person walking around introducing you to everybody. You know, he's, even though his name's on the title, he kind of stepped back and it's like, you know what? I want to say goodbye to Hugh Jackman as Wolverine in a great way. I want to say goodbye to the Blade, Wesley Snipes in a great way. Jennifer Garner as Elektra in the right way. You know, that kind of thing. I thought was very beautiful and it was really cool to see. And it was fun. Sometimes I wish it wasn't as jokey as it was. I wish it was a little bit more serious, but if it was, it wouldn't be a Deadpool movie. And sometimes you got to keep that tone so you can get away from all the craziness that you're going to do, because it was all over the place as far as action, as far as like the comedy and humor, the tone and stuff like that. I did kind of miss the Deadpool crew, like Dopinder and stuff like that. I kind of miss those characters. They were fun, you know. I wanted to see more of his crew, like Blind Owl and stuff. Even though they were in there, I kind of wanted to see more of them because I kind of grew to love those characters as well. But was it cool seeing Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan? That was pretty cool because he wanted to join the Avengers, but also he was Foggy in the Deadpool movie. So it was nice to have him back. So when I thought they was going to bring the X-Men back, they were more bringing back the Fox. So when they had Fox Studios, you know, and the void all crumbled and broken, it was almost giving everybody a goodbye who was part of Fox in a way, or representations of the Fox movies, a chance to say goodbye if we didn't get a chance to, because they did kind of just fade away and disappear. When Marvel took over Fox kind of disappeared. And so goes all the history and the trials and all the other kind of stuff was gone with that. So for them to have one last hoorah to say goodbye, or we to see them in good standings, or whatever it is, even if it's joking or being funny, or even with Wolverine, with Laura, with Daphne Keane, her coming back, you know, that was pretty cool to have her to say goodbye. Cool. And we saw her in a cool way. And I always wondered, like, when she walked off and Wolverine was our introduction to her, what happened to her? What happened to her and the kids and stuff? So we got some closure with that. Her and the kids made it, and a lot of those kids made it because of him and his sacrifice. And even though they joked around with the beginning and digging up the bodies and stuff like that, his sacrifice didn't come undone. That Wolverine from that timeline or that situation mattered. You know what I mean? So I liked how they dug him up in a way, but yet and still it didn't take away what he did. Because sometimes for one last ride, we're going to destroy your legacy. I like how it went around and didn't destroy any legacy, but yet and still it almost said, you know, let's give one more round and let's go through this. And the different versions of Wolverine, where you saw like the small comic book accurate Wolverine, that he was tiny, so all the people complaining like he's too tall. You saw him too short and done well and you saw the different versions from the different comic books and the different interpretations of him as Wolverine. That was beautiful to see. And you know, the patch version when he was doing his little spy thing when he was away from the X-Men and stuff like that. And then, you know, Henry Cavill, his interpretation of Wolverine, because people wanted him. He was kind of fan casted. So to even have that in there, you know, they covered it all. And they did it in a montage almost, but it was still funny. Old man Logan sitting on the porch, you know, it was just, man. And it was so much inside baseball that if you're not familiar with those movies, you're going to have a hard time going with it. But if it was still a good movie, but if you knew the stuff that it was referring to, oh man, it was a ride. Even things like with Johnny Storm, you thinking it's Captain America because he's wearing the blue suit. He's in rags. He got like a red armband. So you're thinking like, that's Captain America, of course. He could have been in the void because, you know, he disappeared. Remember, he left and went to go with Peggy and all this other kind of stuff. So maybe a portion of him got trapped, right? But who would have thought, like, oh, no, that's Johnny Storm. So when everybody's excited, waiting for him to say Avengers Assemble, and you see some Avengers jump out of somewhere, no, he said flame on, and he was Johnny Storm. So
that was his character first anyway, so that was cool.
It was on hit. And I knew something was up when he had that foul mouth. I'm like, Cap don't be cursing and talking crazy like this. So I figured it's a different interpretation of Cap when he cursed, but when he became Johnny Storm, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense then, because Johnny would be, you know, more, you know, New York and more cutting up and stuff like that. He has that more of that personality and all that. And to see Wesley Snipes and to say that, you know, I swallowed slow when I saw it. Like I saw him, and I was just kind of like, wait, what? And then the music and the slow motion and the growl, and he's walking around that corner, like, ain't no way I would have thought. And regardless if they trying to joke about it now, because I saw a little thing where Wesley saying, oh, we fooled everybody to make them think we hate each other. No, y'all hate each other. And he told that in the way when he said, I ain't heard from Ryan in forever. And when I got the call, I was trying to see what was up. Otherwise, if y'all was cool and all that kind of stuff, you would have knew that phone call was coming. You wouldn't have been surprised, and you wouldn't have needed to know what was up. So rightfully so, I understand them not getting along, rightfully so. And I understand, you know, the tension of being railroaded from your show. Now, that Blade is black as hell as far as the vibe, the style, the swagger. That movie is like a black superhero. So either he wasn't a vampire killer, he was just a black dude walking around. That was Wesley. They just put fake teeth, but the martial arts, the swagger, the style, the talking, all that was Wesley. The only part they put as far as makeup was the shades. He probably wore shades like that anyway. Only thing that was a costume was those two fangs in his mouth. The rest of that was Wesley. And that's why Mahershala is going to have a hard time anyway, because Blade was Wesley. And so for him to kind of get his just due with this was beautiful. I didn't know to be upset or to cry, but it was beautiful to see. And I'm hearing that people are kind of want Wesley to come back, and we want that one last Blade movie. And even Ryan Reynolds is kind of pushing, talking about, hey, let's give Wesley the send off that he deserves. So if Ryan Reynolds is talking like this, it could possibly be a producer or somebody in Kevin Feige's ear and be like, hey, give it to him. Because I remember Wesley Snipes was in talk with Marvel about possibly doing one more Blade movie, and it got killed real quick when Mahershala said, and I'm not saying that Mahershala did this, but those talks, I'm sure, ended quickly when they had this Academy Award winning actor asking to be Blade. Now that's not a bad thing, but I'm just saying, I'm sure anything they were planning on doing with Wesley possibly was not going to happen because of Mahershala. And so,
well, the only thing,
and so with this, with that happening, and the movie ain't done yet, and they still having issues with the script, and from they haven't done anything yet with that movie really. And even stuff they did, they kind of undid, or it's not happening. This would be a good opportunity, and I also think people understand enough, if it's in the Deadpool world, to have two Blade movies, and people know that they're two different things. To grow up on the first Blade, we know it's different, and the new people coming in, they will see that they understand multiverse, and it would be a whole different kind of vibe and feel for both of those movies, even they were alongside each other. People would know the difference.
So what I would do in that regard, I would just bring them together. That's all. I would just make Mahershala his son. I would do a new Blade movie, and because they're having too many problems trying to get the script together for Mahershala. So I feel like if they brought Mahershala in and he's Blade at the end, that's fine. Then he's gonna do his own franchise. But I mean, is this movie ever gonna come out? I mean, they've been working on that for years. It's ridiculous, man. I do want to see his version.
No, but I'm saying what I want from Wesley is I like the world that Wesley had, and I think the world that they would have for the new Blade would be different because it would include all these Marvel heroes and stuff. So that whole thing of how that Blade vibe would be different than this Marvel one. So to me, they could stand alone separately.
But that's also a gripe I had too. I felt like his world was cool, but it was too vampire centric, because Blade didn't just kill vampires. And that was the great thing about this Deadpool movie. We got to see him go up against non-vampire people like he does in the comic book. It's just like you kind of put him in this, you kind of confine him to this black superhero who's only a vampire killer. No, he's a superhero who goes up against everybody. He goes up against Dr. Doom. He goes up against vampires. So that's the one criticism I have.
But he didn't do that before. His main things he was fighting was vampires and stuff like that. So it wouldn't have been that whole world. It's almost like Van Helsing, and he's not fighting against the Nazis. Like Van Helsing would fight against the monsters. So those worlds were already made. Even though Wesley kind of changed up how that whole Blade, the look and all that kind of stuff was. That wasn't like the comic book anyway. So
yeah, but the thing is, I don't have a problem with you killing vampires, but I don't want you just to be working on vampires. I want those supervillains to come into his movies. That's to me, that was my complaint. That was the one thing missing from his universe, from that franchise to me. It was always just vampires. And I mean, that worked with part 2. It just didn't with part 3.
But but that just wasn't a well-written movie. But most characters are going to fight the people of their environment. Like that's like saying when you have Wesley Snipes fighting vampires, that's equivalent to Iron Man fighting different people who's still in his suits. That's the same thing as Captain America fighting the Nazis. So the only reason why we got the crossover with bad guys is because they came together. But normally, everybody fights their set of bad guys. Like Batman fights the Joker, the Penguin, and all those. He's not fighting superhero villains because they would kill Batman. Batman are fighting boots on the ground folks that's in his environment. So most people, like Batman would never fight, Superman villains in Gotham. So most characters have their set of bad guys.
But in the Justice League, you have to go up against some of those people. But I hear what
Once
you're
again,
saying,
I said when they combine them together, they get crossover. But when they're in individual movies, you never see them.
Yeah, but
Do you ever see Batman fighting Aquaman's bad guys? No, because he's not in the ocean.
No,
so
only if it's Justice League. It's a crossover. That's it.
Yeah, so anytime you got the group coming together, then that's a crossover. But other than that, they have their set of bad guys that they deal with on a normal basis. Because why would Flash deal with criminals when he could fight super villains that are fast too? Why would Superman fight, a bank robber when he needs the people who are powerful?
But I don't always want to see Flash fight super speedsters. That gets boring to me after a while.
He don't. He has Captain Cole. He got Captain Boomerang.
Right.
He has Gorilla Grodd.
So, I mean, even if you give some of those, like I said, for me, yeah, of course I want to see Blade fight vampires, but I want to see him fight, but bring in some other people too. Don't just make it vampires for me, because it just gets boring. That's my thing. Oh. But I mean, if they keep it separate, that's fine too. But I would love another Blade movie, but written well. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing with Mahershala, I wonder. I don't know why it's so hard for them to write a good script for him. This is kind of strange.
No, it's hard to write scripts, especially for black superheroes and black characters in general. That's why we don't have a lot of them. We don't have regular black movies with just regular stuff. You know how rare it is to get like a nice rom-com? And then you got somebody who got a budget and opportunity like Tyler Perry. That's like giving a kid a gun. So stuff is getting done, but do we want that? So we can't act like it's easy. And we have this big abundance of great, black movies, comedy or action, or we don't. That's why we get excited when something works out like Bad Boys or something works out like Blade. That's why it's so rare.
Well, we need to see more writers, and we need to see more black writers writing these stories instead of people who aren't black trying to write from a black experience. That's problematic in itself too. So, and even if you just get a nice melting pot of writers, I'm fine with that too. But we don't seem to necessarily have that. So, and that's what's been hurting. But it's been years. There's no excuse not to have a decent screenplay for this actor, for this man. It doesn't make any. And then when you look at the comic books, I mean, it's like, and you can even use some of that to help you. So I don't know what they're doing or what they're not doing. I wish I could be a fly on that wall, but it is frustrating. So at this point, seeing Wesley come back as Blade for Blade number 4, yeah, I'd watch that. Yeah, I expect for it to be a little bit different because it's a whole new time and age, but I would definitely watch that.
Yeah, so, I think he deserves a better part 3 to finish up his trilogy. Like
I
said, what Mahershala does, that's going to be interesting to find out what they're going to do without it being a copy of what Wesley Snipes did. And like I said, I'm rooting for him. I really do. But like I said, that is so much. It's so much Wesley. I really don't know, because really, like I said, Blake wasn't even like that in the comics. Like Whistler and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff. Like that movie made that version of Blade. So much so that you wouldn't have wanted to be like the comic, because the comic would have been campy and it wouldn't have worked out. So Wesley created that Blade. Matter of fact, I wish it was a different name and he would have did it on his own, and that way he could have moved on and did what he wanted to with it and not let people railroad him or jump into it. I really wish.
I'll say this. I think Mahershala Ali is probably the only actor to play Blade outside of Wesley Snipes. When I look at him and when I think about his work, his diction, the way he speaks, his mannerisms. When he said he wanted to be Blade, it made all the sense in the world. I'm like, oh, yeah, that would be him. I can see him doing that. So I do want to see his interpretation of it. I'm just impatient. And maybe it's not a good idea to have them both in the same film, or maybe it is. I mean, it could be interesting. It could be on some No Way Home stuff. I don't know. But something needs to get done to jumpstart him. But see, and that would be them helping Wesley with his send-off and jumpstarting Mahershala. But 2 separate entities is fine too, because Mahershala's movies could be where he's not just doing vampires. It could be more like the comic book, and that could be great to watch.
Yeah, he's definitely gonna be connected to the Marvel universe, so it'll make it a different movie just because of that.
That was my criticism too, that he wasn't connected to the Marvel universe the way he should have been.
But a lot of stuff wasn't connected to the Marvel universe either until they decided. Yeah. Like Iron Man wasn't connected to the Marvel universe either until they did the little tag thing just to see if it was going to work. Like I said, all this stuff with everything being connected, this is brand new. This especially in movies and stuff. This stuff is real. It's old to us now, but this wasn't done before. So all these prior movies and the expectations that we put on them that wasn't even a thing before, it just didn't work like that. That's just not how it was.
No,
this is a relatively new thing.
Well, the Marvel Universe didn't even find itself for years. The Marvel Universe was in chaos. They were in disarray for a long time.
Right. So, and matter of fact, to be honest, I wouldn't want to connect it anyway, because that was the best thing that they had. So I wouldn't want Fantastic Four mixed in with Blade. I wouldn't want that messed up, other movies that they made connected to Blade. Don't mess up my good Blade with your bad, Marvel situation, especially when they wasn't even on the same level.
I will say this: I like Julian McMahon as Dr. Doom in Fantastic Four films.
That's fine.
I thought he was good. So, but I know what you mean, though. So it gets crazy. But no, Deadpool Wolverine was a great film. I enjoyed it. I can't wait to own that. And even the opening scene where he's doing the NSYNC dance and killing people, that was wow. And
That's very
he was
Deadpool.
doing the moves. He was doing the actual choreography. I wonder if that took them a day or two to even film that. I mean,
I think there's a real dancer wearing that costume, but it was still fun. Because if you're not dancing, that whole neck movement and stuff he was doing, that doesn't come natural. So I think there's a real dancer up in there doing those moves.
Yeah. So shout out to Ryan Reynolds. He did his thing.
Yeah, and thank you for looking out for everybody else. You know what I mean? Like I said, you could have been selfish. You done established that movie franchise, that IP for yourself, and have your own world. Like I said, he has enough people on his own that came with that movie, the original movie, that he didn't need. He got like copycat. He got characters that he didn't even explore. So he put all his stuff on the back burner for this. And I thought that was pretty dope. And so I wouldn't have been mad if he was selfish and just did a Deadpool movie, but for him to give us this thing with Hugh Jackman and all that, I appreciate the selfless about sharing the platform. And also Marvel needed that win really bad.
Yes, they did.
Yeah,
I agree. And they finally got it. That was their movie for this summer. They got the love they were looking for. So
right. So Marvel, do not fumble this ball. You've been given a gift. Not only is prove the fact that you can have a rated R movie, well accepted and viewed, you also got a handoff to do wonderful things. You know, he gave you the portal to bring in a whole new world or a world of the past into the new upcoming movie. So if it works out right, they will use this handoff and don't drop it. That's all I gotta say. Don't drop it.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
All right. Well, it's good catching up with you, Captain Keith. It was great discussing this new movie that was long overdue. Yeah, it was fun. It's fun. I can't wait for our next conversation. And
me too.
We'll be back sooner than later for sure.
Yes, indeed.
All right. So it's been Jay and Captain Keith. Until next time. Peace.
See you somewhere out in space.